Right, last one of the exotic weapons. We are covering pistols, and at the end I'm going to be doing a tier list of sorts, maybe, kinda, yeah. Before we get into it, just to confirm, I will be going over the exotic gear after this. However, there is a lot more gear than there is weapons, so it's possibly going to take a bit longer. These have been a nice little break from doing spreadsheets, which has been actually quite nice. However, I would like to actually get back into doing spreadsheets, so I will be doing the exotic gear, but I'm going to be doing some other weird fluffy stuff in the middle as well. Anyway, let's crack on. Obviously, we only have pistols left, so we're going to start things off with Liberty. Liberty is an exotic D50. It has the talent Liberty or Death. Hits grant 2% weapon damage, stacks up to 30 times, 60% weapon damage. Headshots consume the stacks, repairing your shield for 3% per stack. That's 90% repair on your shield. Attachments, first of all, secondary attribute, 10% damage to targets out of cover. Optic, 10% headshot. Magazine, 15% weapon handling. Muzzle, 5% crit chance. And underbarrel, 15% fire rate. Liberty is actually a top tier pistol. The only problem with it is just the simple fact that Regulus exists. Before Regulus, it was Liberty. Liberty has been changed a few times. I think its most powerful iteration was its second one, where you could just break an enemy weak point and then it would give you 500% weapon damage. It's currently in the Descent. I believe it's like the Blind Justice talent or something. That is what Liberty used to have. It also used to have an attachment for like 45% damage to targets out of cover, which was absolutely nuts. Can you tell why we like this pistol? In its current iteration, it is still strong, very strong. In fact, it pairs well with quite a lot of builds. However, the real trick to this weapon is pairing it with tank builds, essentially, with good Liberty understanding and a bit of tactical play and a bit of know-how. You can near enough become immortal to front-facing enemies. Annoyingly, it doesn't really help if enemies are behind you, but the overall effect of Liberty is absolutely amazing. It is just a shame it's been sidelined for two reasons. Tanky builds aren't really the go-to for a lot of endgame play, minus Iron Horse Raid, in which case there's 3 scenarios, as well as Regulus exists. That's like the biggest problem with pistols. Regulus exists. Up next, we have Busy Little Bee, which is an exotic PF45. The talent is aptly named Busy Little Bee. Each shot to a different target will give 1 stack, up to 10 max, with each stack giving 20% weapon damage increase. Stacks will activate once you have switched weapon and they last for 10 seconds. Changing weapon again during that said 10 seconds will cancel the buff. Secondary attribute is damage to targets out of cover. Optic is 25% optimal range. Magazine 10% reload speed. Muzzle 10% stability. And underbarrel is 5% crit chance. This weapon suffers from a severe issue of everyone thinks they know what they're doing, but no one actually knows what they're doing. When this weapon came out, so many people were like, oh my god, that's amazing, look what we can do, bloody bloody blah. The problem was, by the time someone has spent time stacking Busy Little Bee, another player like me coming along with strikers would have just killed those enemies anyway. Kind of making Busy Little Bee redundant. It's like, great, you did all this time stacking and now you've got literally nothing to show for it. That's not to say this weapon can't be absolutely amazing. However, the only times I've ever really seen it be amazing are in things like speedruns, whether that be Iron Horse, Dark Hours, or sometimes in the legendary missions. There's not really much cool for this weapon overall. The idea behind it is absolutely brilliant. I am still trying to find a weird and wacky way to incorporate it into some build as like the main mechanic. Having some form of pistol build, running around killing things with Busy Little Bee, and then oh no, a Chunga or a Named Elite. That's fine, just swap to something and then just burn them down with 200% weapon damage. Sounds amazing. Again though, the overall effect of this weapon is problematic. I would be spending so much time running around with my pistol, trying to kill things with my weird, wacky Busy Little Bee pistol build, just to be able to just shoot things with my AR, when I could have just done a normal AR build. It is great, it works very well in tandem with things such as negotiators, as well as some stacking mechanics such as Heartbreaker or Strikers, it is a pretty handy weapon just to get 1 or 2 stacks on, swap to your AR and then start building stacks. The main problem with builds such as Strikers or Heartbreaker is without stacks you have very little damage, so you spend time building up stacks. Busy Little Bee is a way to kind of not negate that, but a way to get around it. Build 2 or 3 stacks, get an extra 20, 40, 60% weapon damage, swap to your AR, and then as you're building stacks, Busy Little Bee will be in effect, so you can build your stacks. You'll see your damage fluctuate quite a lot, but it's a good way to get immediate damage without having to rely on the stack building. That's basically the only real use I've found for it in general play outside of speedrunning, and even in speedrunning, I think it's used once or twice, like legitimately. I know a lot of players have put a lot of stock into this weapon, but overall, Regulus exists. And speak of the devil and he shall appear. Last but not least, we have good old Regulus itself. It is an exotic magnum. Talent is Regicide. Headshot kills create a 5-meter explosion, dealing 400% weapon damage and applying bleed to all enemies hit. Secondary attribute is 10% headshot damage, magazine is 10% reload speed, and muzzle was 20% accuracy. Not a lot going on here, but it doesn't need it because it's a bloody Regulus. Regulus is the answer to why don't they let all the exotics be re-rollable. To put this into some form of weird, wacky perspective, if we were able to put damage to targets out of cover on Regulus, there would literally be, other than I want to, there would literally be no point to any other weapon existing. Your favourite St. Elmo's Strikers build, doesn't matter, Regulus with Detox will do more. Your favourite Scorpio build, doesn't matter, Regulus with Detox will do more. In fact, the only thing that would possibly compete with Regulus will just be a normal Headhunter's Fury build with an M870. That's basically it. This weapon single-handedly shook up the entire meta for the game upon release. It's that kind of broken. A lot of people say like St. Elmo's is OP. Oh no, au contraire, my good friend. Regulus is OP. It's so OP that the current meta, and has been since Regulus' release, is pretty much just this. This is the meta. There's no ifs, ands or buts about it. All you need is Headhunter, either use Chainkiller if you're running the Punch Drunk Mask, or if you're not running Punch Drunk Mask, put in a D&H chest with Headhunter and Regulus. That's basically it. That's all you need. That is the meta. Done. Now, annoyingly, it is only achieved from a project which you get upon completing the Iron Horse raid. However, if you do need help with raids, there are plenty of communities. GC Rock is probably the most notable, simply just because he is across all platforms. If you're just on console, Little Huge is a good shout. I'm pretty sure Nerve CYC also covers both consoles. If not, I know he covers PlayStation. And if you're on PC, shout out to DJ Tickle, and obviously the Bro Squad, we can help you. Now, I'm going to son on my inner YouTuber, and we're going to do a tier list. However, I'm going to do them differently. One, because I've done them on a spreadsheet. I was getting like withdrawal symptoms, so I had to do something on a spreadsheet. And the second reason they're going to be different is because I've done them in 2 stages. One is comparing them at their potential best with no other scenarios around. They're literally just in their absolute maximum performance with their absolute top tier build that they could use, and then they're ranked. And then the other one is remembering that other things exist, other weapons, other scenarios, and comparing them directly against the meta that we have in game. A good example of this, because it's come up a few times, is Dread Edict. Dread Edict, in terms of making a DPS MMR build, is absolutely brilliant. It is the best MMR for DPS. So if we just take DPS as our overall scaling, Dread Edict will actually appear quite high on the list. But when we look at comparing it to the actual meta for MMRs, it's trash, just simply because why would you make a DPS MMR build? So without further ado, let's just have a look at this tier list. Up first, we have Sanka Imperium in F. Is it any wonder? Like, seriously. Next, we have Merciless in D tier. Although the damage and the talent is absolutely great, being able to utilize it either means you have to nerf your build to get the handling up, or sacrifice the talent to use Braced, or just, I don't know, aim better, I suppose, but the thing is really hard to control. Sweet Dreams is in D tier 1. The DPS, individual damage wise, it's great, but the actual DPS is pretty low, and the cooldown on the non-elite melee kill is kind of a letdown. Backfire, I wish this was higher. I really wish Backfire was better, but the problem is you're either going to need to find a mechanic to circumvent the bleed, or just deal with the bleed by using either a healer or Hasbro, and at which point you're tanking the build or killing yourself. Bullet King is just absolutely trash. I don't even understand why it exists. It doesn't have a damage talent. The only thing it has going for it is the lack of reload, and so many people keep telling me, oh, but no reload means more DPS. No, because if you're doing fuck all, not reloading fuck all still means fuck all. So yeah, moving on. Bighorn, the big problem with the Bighorn is it's got an accuracy talent on it. Like, you need to be able to hit your headshots. Good luck. It's just not going to happen. It's like saying I've got to pay a bill, but you have no money in the bank. Problem. Eagle Bearer, again, requires accuracy to actually initiate the buff by getting a headshot kill. One, the weapon is quite lacking in terms of overall damage, so getting the headshot kill was going to be a struggle. Hitting the head is another thing entirely. And then if you do get the buff and you're taking damage, great, it will help you stay alive. The problem is if you don't mitigate all of the damage you're taking, whether you're in or out of combat later on or after the fight, yeah, Tenacity don't give a shit, it will just kill you. Lady Death, the big problem with Lady Death is going to be the stacking mechanic in conjunction with its small magazine size, and because of this it just can't compete with Chatterbox. Like, it's a good weapon, I like it, but it just can't compete with the other exotic SMGs. Pestilence, this is a great weapon. It's probably one of my favourite LMGs. I really like it. It's not here out of spite, because I know a lot of endgame players hate this damn thing. I really like it. The big problem with it is the DPS is quite low. You can hit pretty numbers. The Plague of the Outcast debuff is wondrous, but the damage is pretty low. Chameleon, big issue here is going to be the stacking mechanic. Again, if you notice, the ones that require stacking are pretty terrible. Yeah, 45 seconds on a what is actually an amazing buff. If those buffs were like permanent and always on there, this Chameleon will be like double S tier. It is pretty much up there, but it's a lot of effort to go through all of these mechanics to get the buffs, and the buffs only last 45 seconds. Great if you can kill things. The buff continues out of combat and then reapplies the cooldown when you re-engage, but it's just a ball ache. Busy Little Bee is going to be our first on our B tier. What you can actually achieve with this weapon is amazing. You can literally forego the whole red core versus blue core argument, just put Busy Little Bee on and make a complete rainbow build, stack it up to 10 stacks, pull out your AR and just shred everything with 200% weapon damage. You'll be fine. It works that way. The annoying thing with it is actively being able to do that. So under its best scenario, which is what this is, we are assuming we have some god tier plays and can do that, and under those circumstances it is a B tier. Pretty much the same with Dread Edict. If you absolutely had to make a DPS MMR build, you only really have one choice. It's directly comparable to a Focus M1A, which I'm hoping we all know is pretty damn powerful. So yeah, Dread Edict gets a B tier. Ravenous, under the right circumstances, this thing can be a monster. It will either give you additive damage through the cause of its explosions, or it will give you multiplicative damage against armor plating, destroying chungers and warhounds. It can also give you bonus armor, which is great for staying alive. Diamondback. The big issue with Diamondback is the RNG of what target it actually picks. If it picks something a million miles away, you're fucked. And also, to get the best out of this weapon, it does lock you into using Negotiator's Dilemma. Chatterbox, the big issue with this is going to be its attribute, just simply because it's critical hit damage. Even if it was damage to armor, this would be so much better. It also does lock you into using certain builds or skills just so that you're able to engage in the fight. Blue screen, in terms of performance, this will outperform Pestilence simply just because 1, it does more base damage, 2, it doesn't just offer damage from its talent, it also offers utility, therefore allowing it to do and fit into a lot more scenarios. Mantis, the big problem with Mantis is just the simple fact that Nemesis exists. Whether you like Nemesis or not, Mantis is great, but it is going to fall short in some scaling areas, whether that be 4-man or legendary. It's just going to fall short. Dr. Home, in terms of base level rifle output, Dr. Home is the highest, and once you put a full build on and start equating in some damage talents, Dr. Home still holds pretty solid in 3rd place, as well as the fact that it offers a team-wide preservation, offering heals for you and your entire team. Scorpio is A tier, obviously. It does good damage, it offers CC, debuffs enemies. The only reason it's not S tier is it can be a nuisance for your team members. That's basically it. Capacitor is silly strong. If we were able to change that 9.5% damage to health to 10% damage to targets out of cover, Capacitor would beat Ubisoft in most situations, along with the fact that it has a 10% crit chance mod and a 30% crit damage mod. This thing is actually a monster, and you can pair it very well with some skills. St. Elmo's very powerful AR, but it is still outperformed by a few other things. Overall, the big thing that holds this back is the lack of a damage talent. Like, the talent is actually null and void and just isn't even worth mentioning. Regulus, is there anyone that this is S tier? I don't need to talk about it, do I? Liberty, under the perfect circumstance where this is able to have a shield with you, you're able to do some pretty impressive DPS as well as heal your shield by some weird measure, near enough making you immortal as long as nothing gets around behind you. Nemesis, the highest shot weapon in the game, just because, yeah, you can do so much damage with this, it's actively unreal and is the trademark for a lot of MMR players. Cool. Right, with all that said and done, what happens now if we actually put them in a tier list, but compare them against what the actual meta is for their class at the moment? So, Sanctum Imperium, dogshit MMR, bad damage, can't utilise focus correctly, and it also can't utilise Headhunter. Merciless, rifle, the entire class is just dominated by the M1A, pointless running. Same with Sweet Dreams. In terms of shotgun output, you've basically got Scorpio, Super 90, M870, not much else is worth running. Bullet King is just absolutely terrible. L86, RPK, MG5 are just going to completely demolish this. Backfire is either a D, just in general when compared to other SMGs. However, if you are able to get a backfire build running for Golden Bullet under that very specific circumstance, it will be an A tier. Chameleon just completely outshined by the top 5 ARs, FAMAS, F2000, TKB, Police M4, Honey Badger, no point running it. Dread Edit, don't get me wrong, very powerful, I like the weapon, but why would you run a DPS MMR build when Headhunter exists? There's just no point. Eagle Bearer and Bighorn, it's pretty much the same scenario as Chameleon, there's no point running them when things like FAMAS exist. Like, in terms of their overall meta performance, they are just lackluster. Pestilence, in terms of LMG, against the meta, like I said, just L86, RPK, MG5 are just going to do so much more. Lady Death, due to the small magazine, it really does just fall short, and it ends up just feeling lackluster. Busy Little Bee, in most scenarios this is a C tier, possibly even lower, but if you get the stacking mechanic working correctly, and in some scenarios it is absolutely vital to some mechanics that are utilised in a variety of different situations. Same thing with Ravenous. Generally speaking, open world, it is a C tier, it's pretty terrible, but in certain circumstances, it is a meta weapon which allows you to one-shot a lot of raid bosses. Diamondback is actually a pretty good rifle. It possibly should be higher. The problem is just the RNG of its mechanic. Dr. Home, don't get me wrong, I really like this weapon. I would actually pick Dr. Home over a lot of other rifles, simply just because in order to actually beat Dr. Home, you have to use Rifleman, which means you have to get headshots. I suck at this. Tatterbox, probably one of the best SMGs in the game. It can outperform so many different things. The big thing holding it back is just things like Dark Winter and the customizable nature of a lot of other vectors, which allow you to tailor your weapon and your build to how you see fit. Blue Screen is an absolutely amazing LMG. It does fit into quite a lot of top tier builds, along with the fact that, like I said previously, it doesn't just have to do damage. It can do utility, it can pulse things, it can disorient things, it can just do so much. So yeah, Mantis is B tier, although it is great and it does work well. White Death, basically does the exact same thing, as well as the fact that Nemesis still exists. Liberty has the issue of it only really fits into one build. If we're comparing an actual pistol meta, yeah, not much is competing with Regulus. Capacitor, no matter how we slice it, it is a top tier AR. It does some hefty DPS by itself due to its attachments, and you can also buff your skill damage, which is brilliant. St. Elmo's, the main reason this isn't higher is because there's just so many different ways we're able to outperform it, either just by using a FAMAS with Strained, Police M4 with Flatline, or just decide to run a focus build, which is for DPS meta ARs, pretty much the meta. Scorpio is still very powerful and holding strong. The only reason it's not going to go into S tier is just because it is a nuisance. Regulus, obvious reasons. Nemesis, obvious reasons. So this is how they stack up compared to the meta. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. I hope it has been somewhat insightful. Have fun. Good luck. Don't die. It's bad for the health.